The rain hit the airport windows like fists, and Emily Carter stood frozen at the hotel counter, staring at a screen that had just erased her entire night in one blinking red error message: no booking found, no room reserved, no explanation, nothing but a stranger's tired eyes telling her she had nowhere to sleep in a city that wasn't hers. She had flown 11 hours for a job interview that could change her life, clutching a printed confirmation that meant nothing to a system that had, somehow, lost her completely. If you believe people deserve second chances, that kindness can find us in the most unexpected moments, hit like, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from tonight, share this with someone who needs a reminder that strangers can save us, and subscribe, because this story is about to show you exactly that. The front desk clerk kept apologizing, tapping keys, frowning at a screen that refused to cooperate, while behind Emily a line was forming, impatient travelers shifting their weight, checking watches, sighing loud enough to be heard. She felt her face burn with the particular humiliation of being a problem in public, a woman in a wrinkled blazer with a suitcase and no bed, in a hotel fully booked because of a conference she hadn't known was happening. The clerk finally looked up with the kind of expression that meant bad news was coming, and explained that every room was gone except one, a room already assigned to another guest who had checked in an hour earlier, a man traveling alone for the same conference, and that the only way to solve this tonight, the only way, was if he agreed to share. Emily wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, wanted to demand a refund and storm back into the rain, but exhaustion has a way of making impossible things suddenly seem necessary, and so she found herself standing outside room 412, knuckles raised, praying the man behind the door would say no so she could go back downstairs and sleep in a lobby chair with her dignity intact. The door opened, and there stood Daniel Reeves, tie loosened, sleeves rolled to his elbows, holding a room service menu like a man who had already resigned himself to a long, lonely night in a strange city. He looked at Emily, looked at her suitcase, looked at the exhaustion written plainly across her face, and instead of hesitation, instead of the awkward negotiation she had braced herself for, he simply stepped aside and said the room was big enough for two people who didn't want to make each other's night worse. What neither of them said out loud, not yet, was that they recognized something in each other immediately, a tiredness that went beyond jet lag, a weariness that comes from people who have been let down before and learned to expect very little from the world. The room, of course, had exactly one bed. They stood on opposite sides of it like two countries negotiating a border, Emily insisting she would take the armchair, Daniel insisting the floor was fine, both of them too polite and too proud to admit how badly they each needed actual rest after the days they'd had. It was Daniel who finally broke the standoff, dragging the spare blanket from the closet, arranging two pillows down the center of the bed like a makeshift wall, declaring with mock seriousness that this was now the DMZ and neither party was permitted to cross it under any circumstances. Emily laughed for the first time since her flight had landed, a real laugh, surprised out of her, and something in the tension of the room loosened just slightly. They talked longer than either intended. Daniel worked in supply chain logistics for a company that was likely about to lay off half its department, and he was interviewing tomorrow morning for a position he desperately needed but was terrified he wasn't qualified for. Emily was interviewing for a marketing director role she'd wanted for 3 years, a job that represented everything she'd been chasing since her divorce had quietly dismantled the version of her life she thought she'd have by now. They spoke about failure in the honest way that only strangers can, without performance, without the need to protect an image, because tomorrow they might never see each other again and tonight the truth cost nothing. Somewhere past midnight, the conversation slowed into comfortable silence, and Emily turned onto her side facing away from him, and Daniel did the same, the pillow wall between them a fragile, almost childish boundary against something neither of them was ready to name. She woke before dawn to find the pillow wall had collapsed sometime in the night, and her back was pressed lightly against his, the two of them having drifted toward each other in sleep the way people do when their bodies stop performing distance and simply seek warmth. She lay perfectly still, heart hammering, unsure whether to move away or savor the strange, undeserved comfort of it, and that's when she felt him stir behind her, felt his breath catch as he realized the same thing, felt him go still too. Neither of them moved. And then, quietly, in a voice still rough with sleep, Daniel said the words that would replay in Emily's mind for weeks afterward, stay like this, just for a few more minutes, because it's been so long since I felt like I wasn't alone in a room. It wasn't romantic in the way movies dress these moments up to be. It wasn't a declaration, wasn't a kiss, wasn't the beginning of anything either of them could name yet. It was simply two exhausted, guarded people admitting, without quite admitting it, that comfort had found them by accident and neither wanted to let go of it first. Morning came anyway, as mornings do, indifferent to how badly you want to hold on to the night before. They dressed in careful silence, both suddenly formal again, both aware of the interviews waiting for them, both pretending the last few hours hadn't happened even as neither could stop stealing glances at the other. Emily left first, and at the door Daniel caught her wrist gently, not to stop her, just to say that whatever happened today, whether either of them got the job, he was glad the hotel lost her booking, glad the system failed, glad chaos had put her in his path even for one strange, unrepeatable night. Her interview that morning felt different. She walked in steadier than she had in months, carrying some borrowed courage from a stranger who had looked at her collapse without judgment and offered warmth instead of walls. She got the job. She would learn later that Daniel got his too, though it would take a mutual friend at the company, 3 weeks and a chance encounter in an elevator lobby to reveal that they'd both been hired at the same firm, in the same building, 2 floors apart, having spent one accidental night together without knowing fate was setting up a much longer story. If this story has touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that the universe sometimes disguises its gifts as inconvenience, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs a little hope tonight. It genuinely helps this story reach more hearts that need it. They didn't fall into each other immediately after that elevator moment, because real life rarely moves as fast as we wish it would. There were coffee meetings that were almost dates and weren't, hallway conversations that lasted too long to be professional, a growing awareness between them that the night in room 412 had planted something neither wanted to rush and neither wanted to lose. Daniel finally asked her to dinner properly, nervously, months later, admitting he'd been terrified the whole time that she'd think he was strange for remembering a stranger's back against his so vividly. Emily told him she'd thought about it every single night since, wondering if she'd imagined the safety of it, wondering if it was possible to miss a feeling that specific. Before I tell you how their story truly began, I want you to comment one word below that describes what you'd feel if a stranger became the safest person in the room during your worst night. I read every single comment and I want to know your word. They married 2 years later, in a small ceremony that included, as an inside joke only they understood, 2 pillows placed deliberately on the head table, a quiet nod to the fragile wall that had once stood between them and had ultimately failed to keep them apart. Emily kept the printed hotel confirmation that had failed her that night, framed now in their hallway, a strange little relic of the worst evening that had somehow become the beginning of everything good. She would tell people, when they asked how she met her husband, that the hotel lost her booking and gave her something far better than a room. It gave her a person who, on the worst night of her life, simply asked her to stay.